Dr. Sheftall, before the break for news, we were talking about an issue that I believe we need to wrap up on for our listeners to have the loose ends tied up. Finish that conversation and your thought.
Okay, I'd like to jump in quickly because I get off on these tangents because I know so much about this that I start talking about details and I fail to answer the question of our guest.
Yeah, I was asking about how long the vaccine, the effects of the vaccine remained in the body, if it had a half-life or if it was a period of time, or is that a permanent, is it going to damage the body in any way that will not recover? That may end up in the long run doing more harm than the COVID virus, if it had existed, would have done, or the flu or whatever, because it did have some negative effects, I know, on my body. And is that something I deal with the rest of the time?
Well, this is very, very complicated. But I don't know if you remember this, but DNA gets transcribed into RNA, which gets translated into proteins, such as the spike protein. And they injected us with lipid nanoparticles containing not messenger RNA, but modified RNA, because the uracil residues on the RNA had pseudouridination applied to them. Now, do you remember that?
Yes.
That the messenger RNA was not what was put in the lipid nanoparticles. Modified RNA was.
Correct.
And when I watched Robert F. Kennedy get grilled by the senators, they all referred to it, even Robert F. Kennedy, sadly, as messenger mRNA. And they were all wrong. It's modified RNA, and that was one of the big problems, and it relates exactly to your question. The modified RNA had the effect of reducing inflammation, which is a good thing, but also making the RNA last, as far as we know, at least 702 days. That's almost 2 years. And normal messenger RNA gets denatured in minutes. So if Mother Nature makes a mistake in the transcription process, then the messenger RNA only has a little bit of time to make the bad proteins because of the mutation. But when you put pseudouridination on the messenger RNA, it becomes a modified RNA, and so far, as far as they can tell, it lasts at least 702 days. That's the longest they've done an experiment on it, and it's still in the blood. So it's still pumping out spike protein in your body. And by the way, I've already said that there was no SARS-2 virus. So the whole concept that they made up with computer-generated images of spikes sticking off of a spherical virus, the spikes,
Yes.
that's all utter nonsense. There's no spikes. They called it the spike protein because they created the entire issue of there being an infectious disease as a ruse to scare people into taking the vaccine shot, which of course was not a vaccine. It was a way that the powers that be wanted people to produce a very dangerous toxic protein in their own body. And we talked earlier about there being an issue of whether it's safe and effective. It's neither, because of something called the major histocompatibility complex, which I've explained on a previous show.
Right.
But anytime a body in your cell makes a protein that's not self, that cell will be destroyed by your CD8 T killer cells in conjunction with the class 1 major histocompatibility complex proteins. So when the doctors at the University of California at San Francisco kept telling us it would stay in the arm where it was injected, that was completely wrong. We know now that it goes all over the body, gets in the organs, and they're injecting this into 6-month-old babies and having the cells of their organs go through apoptosis, which means destroying all over their body.
Does it have an effect on the immune system afterward?
Yes, it does. It causes class switching from IgG to IgG4, which changes the immune system and causes all kinds of problems with cancer and everything. And by the way, if you guys want to hear another very terrible thing that they did, they inserted SV40 promoters and enhancers
Which is?
Okay, those are, they're from, it's called simian virus 40, simian vaculating virus. And the reason it's in the system, if you will, is because the polio vaccines got contaminated back in the 1940s. And the problem is the SV40 promoters, when they get into the nucleus, which they can get into with the help of the enhancers, if they get incorporated into our DNA in front of an oncogene, which is the genes we all have in our DNA that cause cancer, it'll cause cancer. And they did not disclose that they put the SV40 promoters and enhancers in the plasmids that they used to make the messenger RNA before they pseudo-uridinated it to make it modified RNA. They didn't disclose it. Pfizer did not disclose they were putting that stuff in there.
In fact, we're just not finding,
cancer.
the onion is just not being unpeeled to the point that we're finding the number of lies that Pfizer told about the human research and about their numbers and about the deaths. And in fact, one thing that I'll touch on and see how you respond to it, then we'll take our caller. But I've got an article in relationship to Dr. Weiss, W-I-S-E, in Mitchell Hospital, which is division of Yale University, March of 2022. He said that the whole thing was designed for mass genocide. How do you respond to his statement?
Well, I mean, it caused mass genocide.
That's right.
I don't know well, absolutely I would agree with it, because it was designed to be unleashed on a population, and there was no pandemic or anything.
Well, the bottom line is, Dr. Sheftall, if I can jump in, I'm looking at an article here that says that President Trump announced Kennedy's pick for the head of HHS. He said, for too long, Kennedy stating, for too long, Americans have been crushed by the industrialized food complex and drug companies who have engaged in deception, misinformation, disinformation, and detrimental to the public health. I think that's a pretty clear, powerful statement.
It's very powerful, and it's true, Pastor. I mean, when you look at what's in cereals that they push on children, and even a glass of orange juice, which you and I, who grew up in the same generation, let's say, was told that it's great to drink a glass of orange juice for all the vitamin C that you get in the morning. Orange juice is like drinking pure sugar. It's very bad for you. And of course, it was promoted by the food and drug organizations as a healthy thing for people to drink every morning. I remember my mother said that, drink your orange juice before you go to school. And I'm not blaming my mom, she wouldn't have known. It's just pure sugar.
One other thing before we pick up the line Jim is holding for us, before we pick that up, you touched on it earlier that even the 6-month-old babies were taking the vaccination. Robert Kennedy has stopped that, as you know, and the Association for Pediatric Surgeons have now jumped into the fray, and they're changing. They're saying that we're not going to go along with what HHS says and NIH. We're just simply going to make our own rules and regulations. Think for a moment for that while we take our caller. Jim, you're on the line. Go ahead and question the comment, please.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Great. I pray that you are.
Great. Yeah, Greg kind of stole my thunder because I recall that the doctor was speaking about a vaccine that entered your system and hijacked the cell replication or division to manufacture a spike protein, and then your body would have a T-cell event that would try to rid itself. To me, that just sounds like a perfect recipe for an autoimmune disorder. I can recall Fauci during the 80s, during the HIV epidemic, and the similarities, as particularly the fear-mongering that was going on during that period, that they were pushing forward. And I had read about his, even though we didn't have social media back then, I had read about his attempts to enlarge the CDC budget and all kinds of research, and his claims and boasts for wanting to cure HIV. And, when this first came out, Dr. Fauci was quite adamant about this disease, and I was just seeing a lot of similarities. And I wanted to ask, the second question is the Amish study they just released as far as vaccines go. The Amish don't vaccine the way the American public does. and the differences there. Have you read that?
I haven't read the study, but I know the Amish reject vaccination.
Their
right
health,
to do it.
yeah, their instances of attention deficit disorder and all other kinds of maladies are staggering percentages lower than the American population.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're absolutely right, Jim. The Amish are a very good population to study to see what would happen if we got rid of all these poison vaccines we're injecting into children. Now,
Well, the food too.
and the food too, absolutely. You mentioned so many things there that are so important. Please continue and keep telling us about what you've discovered from our discussions before and the papers that you've read, because you're right. You're exactly right about everything you said.
Well, I was just wondering if you had any more input that might be, helpful to the audience there, because I've also read some other articles about detoxification of the spike protein in the body there, and I was wondering about the validity of those as well, because there's a lot of people that are trying to capitalize on that very, detoxification.
I have a little bit of a problem with that, because if there was truly something that could detoxify the spike protein, it would be front page news on every newspaper in the world, and it would be the leading story on every network news show, and there would be proof that it works. I have not seen any proof that any of the detoxification schemes actually work.
I think Dr. Malone is the one that's pushing that he's come up with.
Well, I
detox.
don't like things pushed that are products where people make money that have not been proved yet. And like I say, if there was truly something that
Yes, I agree
detoxified
with
the
you.
spike protein, everyone in the world would know about it within one day,
Absolutely.
and they'd be taking it. So it bothers me. I mean, here we go with another fear-mongering sale. They're scaring
Snake
people
oil.
about the spike protein.
Snake
and that's snake oil. That's right. So I'm a person who takes science very seriously, and my reputation as a surgeon very seriously, and my background as a physics major, and so forth. So I'm very, very careful to make sure I can prove every single thing I say.
Amen.
And I say a lot of extreme things, like there was no SARS-2 virus, but I'm willing to debate anyone in any public forum over it. I can prove it very easily. And when people claim that they have a detoxification for the spike protein, until I see proof of it, I'm not going to believe it.
Amen.
I don't
agree
care
with
who
that.
says it.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
God bless you. Keep looking up. I believe we have James on the line. James, go over to question or comment, please.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen, doctors, Dr. Sheftall. This is Jim, and my brother from another mother, the other Jim. I guess it's Jim squared. I don't have as eloquent a question, but before I get to my quick question, I wanted to say how grateful I am that God put these great minds together to spread the truth and tell the truth about some uncomfortable things, but some things that people need to know. So those hungry out there for it, they're going to get it today. So my question is this. Along kind of those same lines, I hear a lot of stuff, and I'm a cancer survivor, so it interests me that some cancers evidently, and again, this could be snake oil salesmen, are directly tied to parasites. And so you should do a parasite cleanse. It's the next great thing. And I'll shut up, and I love you guys all, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, James. Have a blessed day.
I can make a statement or two about that, but I'm certainly not an expert on it. The reason I want to throw something in there, Jim, is because Dr. Mackus, who was an oncologist up in Canada, has been touting using ivermectin and fenbendazole to treat cancers metabolically. And of course, that sounds kind of strange at first, but when you actually look at some of the scientific papers that have come out about, for example, bladder cancer, you see that there's some efficacy there. So he's right, and you're right. I don't know that it's the parasites that are causing the cancers, or whether there's some other action of ivermectin and fenbendazole that is protective against cancer, but it certainly shows up in the data. So I don't know what the mechanism is, but the empirical evidence does show that ivermectin and fenbendazole, which are anti-parasite medicines, do help in the case of certain cancers. That's supported by the scientific literature.
Absolutely. Dr. Sheftall, let me ask you another question.
Yes, sir.
The Marxist media, I call it that, is the one that promulgated and pushed the forced vaccinations.
Yes.
A number of people that said no vax, no mask, no 6 foot separation, etc., etc. Do you feel that they were wise in doing that, or in retrospect, how do you view those individuals that said no to the vax, no to the mask, no to the 6 foot separation? Were all of those factual or fiction? And what do you say to those that took that position that's now in many segments of society being laughed at by the vaxxers that say that you're just a no-vaxxer and you don't know what you're talking about? What advice would you give and your thoughts on that?
Well, I will tell you something right now. When I started studying this, and I was right on top of it from the beginning, as you know,
Yes.
I would not have called myself an anti-vaxxer. I just wouldn't have, because, I believed that vaccines were very helpful, that they had saved lives. But the more and more I looked into it, when you hear someone lying to you about certain things, you go, well, maybe I shouldn't have believed them on some other things.
That's
So
right.
I looked into it in great scientific detail about polio and various other things that we've been calling were caused by viruses. And now I am proud to say I'm an anti-vaxxer. I am absolutely certain that the entire paradigm that viruses are tiny little particles with a protein code and only DNA inside of them, with no respiratory system, no excretory system, no circulatory system, etc. Viruses are just little shells with DNA or RNA inside, according to what's taught to us in medical school. But it's a little bit too fanciful now. We have no proof of it at all. There's zero. We have never isolated a virus from a sick person. Can you believe that? It's never been done in the history of mankind. And that's why we sent out 150 FOIA requests. Christine Massey did, a lady in Canada. And, people are required to respond to FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act. And she got 136 responses. And let me tell you what she asked them. Has your organization, and she sent them to the CDC, the NIH, anyone that got a grant, universities, anyone that did research on the subject, she sent those requests out to find out if anyone had not only isolated the virus, the SARS-2 virus themselves, or knew of any paper that showed that it had been isolated. And 136 of those 150 requests were returned, because people are, like I say, are obligated to answer FOIA requests. None of them knew of any paper where the SARS-2 virus had been isolated yet. Even the CDC had to admit they haven't even isolated it yet.
I have one for you.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, the Ford study that didn't get published and that's being talked about a lot. Do you have any other point of reference in the way of a study that had as broad a view of vaccination, childhood vaccinations, as did that study? Because in that study, they had some, I think, 1,800 or 1,900 that became the control group. They looked back, they found this group of children that had never been vaccinated. You could look at them for 15 or 20 years and go, okay, this group has not received a single vaccination. And this other group, we have anywhere from 1 vaccination to 76, I think.
Yeah.
So we have a group, no, control group. By the way, you can't get that control group typically. The idea of having that placebo-based randomized study is we wouldn't do that typically because this is life-threatening potentially, and of course with COVID, that was the thing. Is there any other study we can point to and say, hey, this group no vaccinations, this group 1 to 76, and based on this, we see the ratios of disparity between those that are ill and those that are not.
Okay, let me tell you something that's going to blow you away. I don't know if you all know this, and I had a big fight with Bhattacharya about this, which I won, I'll point out. And that is, when they do a control group and they have a vaccinated group, they end up vaccinating the control group.
Come
Have
on.
you ever noticed
That's
that?
not a study, is it? I mean,
No,
you
they're
defeat-
doing it because they don't want there to be any kind of long-term data that shows how much better the control group did than the
So
vaccinated
it's a
group.
control group.
And you know what their excuse is for vaccinating the control group? They think it's unethical not to vaccinate the control group. So
We've
they'll be
accepted-
protected too. It makes me so
Is it
mad.
just a placebo or something that they get, or is it the same vaccination?
Well, there's a lot of controversy about what the control group gets too. They should be getting a totally inert subject,
Yes.
a substance like saline or
Saline,
something.
right.
But what they do is they give them
A lesser dose.
another vaccine.
Right.
It's so corrupt you wouldn't believe it. I mean, I'll tell you, I could write a book about every single topic that we're bringing up tonight, a 500-page book about it. It makes me so furious that they do this.
Well,
They
type in-
vaccinate the control
Right.
groups.
Type in, though, just for
But then,
vac-
they start out for about a month, and then they start vaccinating the control group, so you can't
Just
tell
add the 500 pages to the 2,000 pages and make
I'd
it
be
a
happy
volume.
to. That's just one subject. And there's thousands of subjects on
Yeah.
this about the fraud that occurs.
Well,
But let me, Greg, let me answer your question, because it's a great question. And there are islands out there in the Pacific Ocean where people have never been vaccinated
Yes.
before. And I know of a guy that went to volunteer there, and after about a month, he was teaching there. And the children looked so healthy.
no autism out there.
None of
You
it.
got the one case in 10,000 or whatever versus the one case in 17 or something like that. But
even less.
Yes.
Because he went to the principal of the school and he said, listen, I'd like to raise some money to get the kids glasses that need them. Because I noticed there's not a single child in the entire class that wears glasses. And he said, the kids here never wear glasses their whole life. They don't need glasses. I mean, these kids are so healthy that live on these islands that don't get all this poison put into them. That are eating fresh fruits and vegetables and meat and everything without getting it all processed first and so forth and so on. And I've seen pictures of some of these kids and they just look like Adonises. They're so healthy, it's incredible looking.
Dr. Sheftall, let's take a minute. Our time is rapidly dissipating. Let's take a moment. Tell our listeners about your two books. Give a, as I call it, the elevator speech on each one of them.
Okay.
And then I'll tell them how they can get one.
Thank you very much. The first book is called Heroes and Villains, the COVID-19 Book of Lists. And in that book, I listed the people, ranked them from 1 to whatever number of people I was able to research, based on the number of deaths their policies caused. So, for example, and I didn't pull any punches. So, for example, you remember Deborah Birx, don't you?
Yes.
All right, she
Dr.
pushed. Yeah, Dr. Deborah Birx. She pushed the lockdowns, which were a horrible idea to lock down healthy people. And I can prove so many things about lockdowns that nobody else really noticed, but I have the data to prove it. And also, I have a screenshot from CNBC when Governor Cuomo was on there. Wasn't that amazing? I'm nodding to people that have read the book. All right, so Dr. Deborah Birx heads the list of women who caused the most death and destruction. And number 2, I think I put Rochelle Walensky in there.
Yes.
And number 3, Leanna Wen, the lady that was one of the MDTV mafia, I call them, that used to comment on the so-called experts on CNN every day.
Right.
And I was lucky to watch CNN all the time because I was in Cambodia and that's the only news station I could get. And I'll tell you, it honed my debating technique like you wouldn't believe, because I'm sitting there looking at the TV every day going, no, you're wrong because bang.
Give us
no,
the
you're
title.
wrong because bang.
Quickly, the title of the
The
two
second
books.
book, the title of the first book is Heroes and Villains, the COVID-19 Book of Lists. And there are about 100 lists in there of people and why they're ranked where they're ranked. The second book is Sanction the COVID Murders. Volume 1 is a tale of 2 viruses, which is really an interesting way to look at it.
And ladies and gentlemen, you can find both those books, conservative.edu. Scroll down to the bookstore and you'll find the 2 books by Dr. Sheftall, and I believe it'd be an edifying journey for you to look at them, study them, read them. And it's our desire today that you have heard well and you will apply what's been said and be educational, inspirational, and beneficial to you. Dr. Sheftall, again, thank you for being here. Dr. Pierce, thank you for joining us in this broadcast. Always good to have Greg with us, and he didn't have to hold his hand up to get a word in today, and I'm thankful for that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Let's Face the Issues. Look forward to meeting you next time on the air as once again we face the issues.